You're on.
All right.
So you are in a blur at Sundance.
So
What's
yeah,
it like to bring? I mean, how panicky were you in terms of finishing the movie before you came?
I didn't have that much time to panic because we only finished 2 days before the festival. So it was like, there was no real time to think, which I think was probably a good thing. Um, I actually didn't watch the film with the final sound mix and completion until we were in Eccles on Friday. So I never test screened it. I had no idea, and that made it better. It was just like I was watching and I was like, oh god, this isn't working. Like this is every little thing was kind of like grating on me, and then you sort of walk out and you're like, wow, that just worked. It's a shocking sort of moment, and I'm glad that I wasn't prepared for it or didn't have any expectations of that.
So you worked with a collective. Can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that group?
It's called Core 13, and it's as much of an approach as it is as a collective. It's not really a club with members who no, you can't get thrown out of Core 13, and you can't really get into Core 13. It's just kind of it's like a way that we do things, and what it really is about trying to create your own reality through film. It's if you want to have, I want to be in my life, movies aside. I want to be on boats. I want to be with my friends. I want to be in sort of frontier locations at the edges of the earth, and film has a way of where you get to go on that adventure with your friends, and Core 13 kind of is a mentality towards production that is a lot more collaborative and gives a lot more freedom and sort of power to every individual in the crew, so that it isn't this sort of hierarchical kind of machine that most of film production is, and it's really about a giant group of us going somewhere and living a story, and out of it comes a movie.
Describe how you came up with the bathtub and the world that you created there, and what is its relation to the real world, and what is its relation to this sort of mythological world that you've created.
Well, the bathtub is very much based on the geography of the bathtub is very much based on a real place called Ile de Jean Charles in South Louisiana, and it's this island that used to be sort of a thriving community. It was a Native American community, and it was sort of disconnected from the land. The only way to get there is on this basically one-lane, 3-mile road that's falling off into the water, and the place is just sort of shrunk down from it's a fairly large island to this tiny little strip of land where all the trees are gone, and it's actually just falling off into the Gulf right now. And so, and I heard somebody say at some point, like we live in the bathtub because they're just constantly flooded all the time. I mean, you get a southeast wind and the road has 3 feet of water on top of it. It's really just living right on the borderline of where the water meets the land, and it's constantly flooded. So that was sort of the real location, and it's also cut off from the world. It's also cut off by the levee system. They built the Morganza levee system down in South Louisiana, and they just decided that it was too expensive to save this place, and so they just left it to die, basically. And that was the real inspiration for the bathtub in the movie. And then, kind of the larger, the culture of the film isn't at all based on that culture. It's much more of an amalgamation of many different things in South Louisiana. It combines New Orleans culture with Cajun culture, with just sort of general South Louisiana culture, and the food and the music and everything in the movie is really mixing all that stuff together. And the reason I did that, partly just because I love both places and I want to live in both of them, and I drive back and forth it's like that's sort of my 2 paradises that I live in. And then the other reason is just that, I really think that South Louisiana is, metaphorically or whatever, it's on the wrong side of the levee. It's basically, there's all these environmental catastrophes, everything that's going on there, and it's basically just been left to, it's stuff that could be solved, and it's stuff and it's places that could be saved, and it's just being left to die, basically,
So you wrote a script that is very much hinged on this one character, Hushpuppy, this little girl, and you wrote the script in such a way that you had to find the actress that was right for that part. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it was a massive search. All the actors in the film all come from either New Orleans or South Louisiana, and so we fanned out and did like a 15-person, 8-parish casting search where we went through what we think about 3,500 girls in the process of trying to find the one. And Quevanjane Wallace actually is from Houma, which is right near where we shot the film. When she walked into her audition, it was the whole film radically changed course. She just brought this like quiet moral compass and this sort of fierce sense of right and wrong and this fierce internal strength to the character that I knew somewhere deep down I knew had to be there, but it took her walking into the room to bring it out, and she saved us. We would have absolutely just crashed into the mountain without her.
No. But talk about how you used the camera, the aesthetics of the film, in terms of showing her point of view.
Well, we shot the film. I knew I wanted the whole film to be handheld, partly because of necessity. Like there was no way that we were going to be able to have time to set up the camera. It was all going to be run and gun with the way that we were shooting. But we couldn't. We started trying to walk the camera, and the issue was that the whole film had to emerge from her point of view. It had to be at her head height. And so even when we're not in a POV shot, even when we're not looking directly through her eyes, you wanted to lens the world from down here, and you can't really operate a 16mm camera from down there. So we used this easy rig where you just like kind of like a little crane over your head, a string hanging down, and so the whole film was kind of floating like right around this level, and that method allowed us to really keep you inside of Hushpuppy's the way she sees the world, and the film is the arc of the film is very much based on a trajectory of her understanding, and so we had to be constantly in her height, in her the world had to be big.
And the other thing that you do is that you enter her imagination and her dreams, and you just literalize them in this outrageous sort of way, using CG, right?
No, there's actually no CG.
How did you do what are they called?
The aurochs.
Thank you.
The aurochs. The aurochs are not CG. They are live animals, 100%. We had, this is sort of part of the corporate team mentality. It's like every animal. The bathtub is this place that's teeming with life. There's animals everywhere. Everything's alive. It's all about sort of Hushpuppy trying to understand nature and fighting with nature. And so we felt that we had to project that into our special effects that couldn't be CG. That couldn't be a technological creation because the bathtub has no technology. So we raised animals to play these parts, and we trained them.
What are they, big pigs?
You're
not going to tell me? They're dressed, in other words. There's heavy
animals.
makeup
their
involved.
Hearts are beating. That's all I can tell you.
Well, there's a post-apocalyptic quality to this. I mean, obviously post-Katrina, or you have a storm in there that could be Katrina, or another one. So this is almost about people who maybe are more capable of surviving the coming, warm world that floods than we are.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they already are. It's happening down there. And that was what made me realize that we could make a film about the end of the world that without any money at all, is because you don't have to build it all. It's all actually happening down there. You see these stretches of that used to be like just forests of oak trees that are these tiny little slivers, and it's just those skeletal trees that you see. Like, that's just happening. It's salt water is getting inside the land, and it's killing the plants, it's killing the fish. The BP oil spill happened on day one of our shoot, right near where we were shooting, and we had to get the BP to move booms to get to our locations, and, that stuff of an actual environmental death is actually all fairly real, so we felt like the combining kind of the real end of the world that's happening with a more mythological, epic end of the world made perfect sense, because it actually does feel like that, and that's what the film is really about, is the feeling of the place that made you being taken away, and learning how to survive that. And the actors in the film, who are all from the region, all really understood that in a way better than me, and better than anyone. And so I think that they just, in their eyes and in their mentality, and they're already survivors, and they're already living that fight where they're sticking by their place. And so we use stuff that's people and places that are going through this already.
But it sounds like the shoot itself was arduous. I mean, you were doing a lot of water. I mean, think about Waterworld, some of these other movies. That's sort of where you're that was one of the most expensive movies of its time, and it almost went under.
Yeah.